A gun carved of wood, blackened by shoe polish, forever identified with the name of John Dillinger, who for 13 months as public enemy number one swept like a mad cyclone through the Midwest, leaving behind a grim trail of bank robberies and murder. This is The Witness. Not a trial, not a court of law, not a legislative inquiry, but a simulated hearing before a simulated committee. A committee representing the morality and the conscience of today, with the power to call before it the famous, the infamous, the evil and controversial figures of yesterday. Tonight's witness, John Dillinger. Dillinger, certainly one of the best-known desperados of this century, a name already enshrined in Crimeland's Hall of Fame. Tonight, the committee will try to sort out the truth from the vast amount of myth that has been written about the Indiana bad man. They will try to reveal the true Dillinger, answer the question, was he a modern-day Robin Hood, as many writers have claimed, or was he, in fact, one of the most ruthless and cowardly of gang leaders? This hearing will be getting underway very shortly, but for now, we return you to our studios.
This portion of The Witness is brought to you by Camel, the real cigarette, an exclusive blend of costly Turkish and domestic tobaccos. The best tobacco makes the best smoke.
You know, they used to say foundries and mills were the best place to find a young man who wanted to learn football. But this young man has put that idea into reverse. He's a football player who wants to learn the foundry business. This is Dick Nolan, defensive backfield star of the mighty New York Giants, as adept at tackling an opponent as he will be when he tackles the foundry business. When it comes to smoking, this future executive says he's learned all he needs to know about cigarettes. His choice? Camels. Nolan says that occasionally he's borrowed other brands, but Camel is the cigarette he buys. He likes Camel's rich flavor, their mildness, the complete satisfaction he gets every time he lights up. Doesn't that sound like the kind of cigarette you should be smoking? Well, if you find yourself smoking more these days, but enjoying it less, change to Camels. The best tobacco makes the best smoke. Have a real cigarette. Have a Camel.
Down in the hearing room, this probe into the fantastic criminal career of John Dillinger is just about ready to get underway. Down on the floor, the members of the committee have assembled at the hearing table, seated the chairman of the committee, Mr. Paul McGrath. On his left, Mr. William W. Smithers. On his right, Mr. Charles Hayden and Mr. Frank A. Milan, the members of the committee. We're ready to get underway. Here's Chairman McGrath.
All right, I will call this session to order. Now, gentlemen of the press, photographers, did you hear my gavel, gentlemen? I think you know what that means. Now, let's not forget our rules of procedure. There will be no interruptions, no photographs during testimony, and let's keep this area cleared in the front at all times. Now, will the officer who entered this room carrying firearms... You, sir? Yes. Will you be good enough to put that lethal-looking weapon down where it can't be seen and handled? Well, either that or go outside this room and walk sentry duty. I refuse to believe that this hearing has to be conducted under the muzzle of a machine gun.
Yeah, give it to me. I'll hold it for you.
All right. We've had our laugh. Clerk, will you swear in John Dillinger?
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your full name.
John Dillinger.
Be seated.
Gentlemen, before we go any further, I would like the record to show that Mr. Dillinger has been advised of his right to have legal counsel, but has refused to avail himself of that right.
Yeah, and let the record also read that Mr. Dillinger has refused counsel because he never has and never will need a legal crutch. He can take care of himself, as he fully intends to do.
The record will so note. Now, Mr. Dillinger, you are presently in custody?
Yeah, presently, but not permanently. You can put that in the record, too.
You were recently apprehended by the police and are now in custody, charged with bank robbery and with murder?
So they tell me.
And prior to your most recent arrest, you were a fugitive from justice, were you not? Wanted by the states of Indiana and Illinois, as well as by the federal government. As a matter of fact, you were number one on the FBI's most wanted list. Public enemy number one.
Well, it's nice to be wanted. Gives you a warm feeling all over.
Is that supposed to be a joke, Mr. Dillinger?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think that you have chosen a pretty poor platform to exhibit your talents as a comedian, sir. That's what I think.
Well, I don't know what you're going to do about it there, Mr. Smithers. You know, you're in a bind. You can either sit there and take it, or you can invite me to leave, which is an invitation I'll be very glad to oblige. But I don't think you're going to do that, are you? I'm the star attraction. I make the box office here, isn't that right? Where are you without me? Nowhere, isn't that right? You think these news guys came here to write up Smithers? You know where Smithers writes in the newspapers? About 2 lines under the want ad.
Now, look, Mr. Dillinger.
Look, don't get me stopped just when I'm getting up ahead of steam here.
Now, I demand that you show proper respect for this committee.
Why? Because you represent the law? Because you represent authority? Well, let me tell you something. I don't give a damn about authority or the law. I'm Dillinger, profession outlaw.
Now, that's enough.
Oh, it ain't enough. That ain't half enough. This is a real switch for a change. You got somebody up here who ain't digging and dodging. I'm coming right out with it. I'm saying I'm an outlaw, a desperado. But that's not big news for you guys, is it? That's not what you got me down here for, is it? Find out if I rob banks? You read the papers. You know I rob banks. By the shovelful I rob banks.
I think we'd better make it very clear to you, Mr. Dillinger, just why you've been called before this committee.
I'm for that.
The purpose of this probe, Mr. Dillinger, is not to determine whether or not you rob banks. We have courts for that purpose, and they are fully competent to deal with your kind.
My kind? What do you mean, my kind?
Well, I think you've told us that yourself. An acknowledged outlaw, a bank robber, a desperado, you said?
Yeah, but where you said my kind, like I was something creepy or slimy or something. Yeah, I said I was an outlaw, and I am. But in a grand old American tradition, like Jesse James, Billy the Kid, Wild Bill Hickok, they were outlaws, sure they were. But they made their place in history, and so has Dillinger.
That is the precise reason for this hearing, Mr. Dillinger. We are very anxious to arrive at the truth. We are very anxious for the book to show the complete record of Mr. Dillinger. Not a romanticized version, not a glamorized lie, but the brutal truth.
Wait, well, what makes you think the truth is so brutal?
Oh, we'll see.
Oh, yeah? I said I was an outlaw, sure. I am. But I've been a gentleman outlaw.
Well, now, sir, that's a new one on me, Mr. Dillinger. What's a gentleman outlaw?
Well, it's on the square.
You mean an honest crook?
I mean coming right out in the open with it. No camouflage. I mean cutting down the rough stuff. No wild capers where innocent people could get hurt. I mean planning jobs like an engineer. You're in, you're out. You don't even hold up traffic. And I mean taking only from those that can afford it.
Like banks?
Yeah, especially banks.
A la Robin Hood?
Yeah, you could say that.
You mean to say you only rob from banks because they can afford it?
Yeah, that's the Dillinger plan to redistribute the wealth. Soak the rich.
Well, I'm curious to know how you developed this philosophy.
Well, I wasn't born with it, I can tell you that. I came on it the hard way, through experience.
What experience?
Well, you want to know that, huh?
Yes, sir. We'd like to know very much.
All right. Now, picture this, then. 1933, July. Mooresville, Indiana. My old man scratching his life away on 10 acres of the scrubbiest land this side of the Sahara. And he scratched and he struggled, and then about 20 years he managed to put away a couple of $100. So what does he do with it? Chung, right in the bank with it. All right, now it's July 1933, like I told you. I come home after being away almost 9 years. And there's Pa. Now, before we can say hello, before we can even touch hands together, he's showing me this paper. The bank has gone busted. 20 years of my old man's sweat, and the bank goes bust. Well, I make up my mind right then and there I'm going to square things. Believe me, I have.
Come on, Mr. Dillinger. You're not blaming the closing of that bank for your career in crime, are you? Taking the crooked road was your very own idea, and the busted bank had nothing to do with it.
I say it had everything to do with it.
Why, your first conviction for a felony occurred 9 years before 1933. 9 years before that bank closed its doors. Isn't that right?
Look, I was 20 years old. What did I know?
That doesn't answer my question. You robbed a grocery store in 1924. You were caught and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true as far as it goes, yeah.
You want to take it further?
You bet I do. I'll take it a lot farther. You want to find out what makes me tick, huh? Why I do what I do? What got all mixed up somehow and wound up Dillinger, the desperado? Okay, I'll give it to you. But first, if I'm straight on the ground rules, I got the right to call witnesses.
Yes,
isn't that right?
That's your privilege.
Well, I see you got this guy I asked for. Suppose we just call Seymour Compton, better known as Cat Compton.
You have the list, Mr. Smithers. All right, call Seymour Compton, Mr. Fleck, please.
Seymour Compton! Seymour Compton. Can I say something?
Certainly, as soon as you're sworn, sir.
Why do I have to be sworn? Why do I have to come here because that bum
now,
called me?
Mr. Compton, if you
I'm a
please.
law officer. I don't take orders from the like
No,
of
sir,
Dillinger.
that will be quite enough. You must take the oath.
Yeah, you heard the man, Cat. For once somebody else is giving the orders.
Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I
so help you
do.
God. State your full name.
Seymour Compton.
Yeah, but we'll call him Cat.
That'll be enough, Mr. Dillinger. Be seated, please, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm saying it again. I think it's a miserable shame that I got to come up here and sit still by the dirty lies that he's going to tell.
All right, Mr. Compton.
Well, you're getting flabby, you know that, Cat? I guess you just ain't had enough exercise.
Now, Mr. Dillinger, I insist that we proceed in orderly fashion. We will not allow you to take up our time with these side remarks. You may question the witness, but only question.
Okay. Now then, Cat.
Don't call me Cat.
The witness is Mr. Compton.
Oh, well, all right. Mr. Compton, in 1924, what was your business? Well, he's got to answer, isn't that right?
Yes, it's a proper question. Answer it, please, sir.
He knows the answer.
Yeah, but the committee don't. Now, what was your business?
I was a guard at the Indiana State Penitentiary in Michigan City.
That's where we met up, isn't that right?
We met.
All right, will you tell these gentlemen what I was sent up for?
Tell him yourself.
All right. I took a 10-year rap. And for what? For standing lookout while some other guy robbed a grocery store. My first offense, they threw the book at me. Now, here's a laugh. This guy that did the robbery, he was a wise old hand. He turned state's evidence. He got 3 years. Me, I'm a greenhorn. I never heard of state's evidence. So they hand me 10. 10 years. Okay. So I arrive at the state prison in Michigan City, Indiana, and in practically no time at all, I make his acquaintance. Now then, you tell them why they called you Cat.
I ain't telling you nothing.
You must answer the question, Mr. Compton.
Sure, you know the rules. You gotta follow the rules. You put down enough rules in your own time, you ought to know that. Now, why did they call you Cat?
Nobody called me Cat.
Nobody but the poor kids you lorded it over at Michigan City. They called him Cat because he had a pet persuader. A cat o' nine tails. 9 leather laces with birdshot at the end.
That's a lie.
Oh, it's a lie, is it? You want me to take off my shirt and prove it? I still carry your brand, Cat. Well, you talk about the law. Look at the law I met. How much schooling do you have?
That's none of your business.
Answer the question.
Well, I ain't had much.
How much? You ever get out of high school?
No.
Did you ever get into high school?
No!
But you, an illiterate, foul-mouthed bum, you got these young kids coming into prison and you took care of them just fine, didn't you? You had the brains and the training to help them and to guide them, didn't you?
For your kind, I got brains enough. I spotted him the minute he walked through the gate. There goes trouble, I says, but I'll fix that. And how wrong was I? How wrong was I, huh? You wasn't in a month before you was sawing your way through the bars. He made a shiv in a machine shop. I caught him red-handed.
First, tell him about our private little meeting, huh? Go on, tell him.
What meeting?
Oh, you don't remember? Every kid used to get a meeting, a personal private interview with Cat Compton when they came in.
That's a lie.
Oh, yeah, who can forget it? Alone with you in your private office and you strutting up and down, swishing that cat o' nine tails, and then you put it right on the line, didn't you? I could have it good or I could have it bad. I had that choice, right?
Are you going to believe this rat?
Yeah, all I had to do was be a good boy and play ball with you. Is that right?
You're lying.
Yeah, and I spit right in your eye, didn't I? Right there in your private office. And then you let me have it with that cat. And you kept on letting me have it with that cat o' nine tails. Every day I got it good. You want to know what makes a Dillinger, huh? All right, you're so anxious to know, I'll tell you. You make Dillingers by letting the law send a kid to prison for 10 years, where the guy who does the job only gets 3. And you make Dillingers by turning a kid over to a sadistic slob like that. All right, you 4 fine, upstanding citizens. You can join me in the chorus of that old song. You know the words. You made me what I am today. I hope you're satisfied.
Dillinger, the desperado, the outlaw, in as dramatic a moment as we've ever witnessed in this hearing room, has tried to shift the guilt for his crimes from himself to society, claiming that his incredible career of crime was the direct result of a miscarriage of justice and the cruelty of a sadistic prison guard. Chairman McGrath has called for a short recess. We'll return to the hearing in a few moments, but now back to our studios.
3rd Avenue and 42nd Street. Here, Bill, have one of mine.
Camels? Since when?
Well, to be honest with you, I had been smoking a little bit of everything. So one day I ran out of cigarettes and somebody gave me a Camel. As you can see, I'm still smoking them. You know, there's just nothing like the rich, good taste of a Camel.
He's right. Whether you're discovering them for the first time or rediscovering them, you'll want to stay with Camels. Camels give you more rich taste, more real satisfaction every time you light up. So if you're smoking more these days but enjoying it less, why not try Camels? The best tobacco makes the best smoke. And the Camel blend of costly tobaccos has never been equaled. Have a real cigarette. Have a Camel.
Down in the hearing room, Chairman McGrath has reconvened this probe into the extraordinary crime career of John Dillinger. Seymour Compton has been excused from the stand, and now Mr. McGrath has taken up the questioning of Dillinger.
Oh, just to recapitulate for a moment, Mr. Dillinger, I believe you claim that you were terribly wronged by society, and that you were driven into being an outlaw by a series of injustices and persecutions.
I could write a book.
I'm sure you could. And you claim that you specialize in bank robbery because your father's savings were wiped out in a bank failure?
Yeah, well, you're leaving out the best part of the story.
Am I?
Yeah, you see, the bank folds, wipes out the old man's savings, and then the receivers of the bank, this same bank, mind you, move in to start foreclosing the mortgage. Now, there's a squeeze play for you. The bank folds, the savings are wiped out, and then they try to take the farm away. Well, I figure if the banks are going to play dirty, I'll play dirtier. I'll make the banks pay the mortgage. That's just what I did.
So the idea of robbing banks came to you only after you were released from prison?
Yeah, that's right. I was released. I went to Indianapolis to look for work. I walked the streets day and night looking for a job. In case you don't know it, I'm a first-class machinist. Well, every time I got a line on a job, they got a line on me. Ex-con. No job. Well, after a while, I headed back to Mooresville. I figured a little time on the farm would help me square things away. Well, you know what kind of a home party the bank arranged for me.
You came out of prison determined to go straight?
That's right.
And while you were in prison, you didn't plan any bank robberies at all?
That's right. Never had it in mind.
Well, you made a number of friends in prison, didn't you?
Sure, I'm a likable fella.
And Homer Van Meter was your very closest friend, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Homer Van Meter was serving a sentence for armed robbery, wasn't he?
That's right.
Harry Pierpont was another one of your prison pals.
Yeah, we got along all right.
And Harry Pierpont was serving 20 years for armed robbery.
Yeah, but what's the point? So Homer and Harry were in on an armed robbery. Who'd you expect me to meet in the pen, the Rover boys?
You made 3 other friends in prison. Russell Clark, Harry Makeley, and John Hamilton, also known as Three Finger Jack.
Yeah, well, what are you getting at here?
I'm getting at this. You ask us to believe that when you came out of prison, you were determined to go straight. And yet your record shows that while in prison, you associated yourself with 5 of the most desperate criminals then held in custody. Out of the 1,500 convicts in Michigan City State Penitentiary, your bosom pals all had one big thing in common. They were all bank robbers.
Yes, isn't it the real truth, Mr. Dillinger? That you were planning your series of bank robbings long before you got out of prison.
No.
Long before your father's bank failed.
Oh, no.
Isn't that the truth,
No,
sir?
it isn't the truth.
It's not. Well, may we call Homer Van Meter to the stand, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, call Homer Van Meter. Mr. Griffiths, please.
Homer Van Meter. Homer Van Meter, please. All right, Johnny.
Hello, you little cuss. What are you doing?
Oh, not much. Gonna give me a long time to do it.
All right, never mind the socializing. Will you take the oath, please, sir?
Use your right hand, left hand on the Bible.
Put your left
Raise
hand
your
on the
right
Bibles. Raise your right hand.
Homer. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will do so, definitely.
State your full name.
Homer Van Meter.
Be seated.
Mr. Van Meter, you are now serving a 20-year to life sentence for armed robbery. Is that correct, sir?
Oh, why remind me?
Yes. Now, how long have you known John Dillinger, sir?
Well, let's see. I'd say about, approximately a long time.
Where did you first meet John Dillinger?
We shared incarceration together.
At Michigan City Penitentiary, is that right?
That's the place.
And John Dillinger became a good friend of yours, didn't he, sir?
Oh, I became a good friend of his. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know, let me tell you, he was no more than a kid, but he showed all the signs. Oh, you could spot it right away. He was always making plans. You sit down next to him, you could hear that brain of his just clicking away. He'd sometimes think so hard, he'd wear me out just watching him.
Yes, sir. Now, these plans that his brain was always clicking away about, did he ever discuss those with you?
Oh, naturally. We was pals.
Tell us about the plans.
Oh, are you kidding? Oh,
No,
you
sir.
think I'd waylay his confidence? You catch me stooling on my pal John. Don't worry about me, Johnny boy. And you think you can trap me into telling you how my pal John figured out the bank jobs, huh? Well, let me tell you, I ain't got enough brains to be that stupid.
Mr. Van Meter?
Yes, sir.
You're not going to tell us that Dillinger, just a kid, planned bank robberies all by himself?
Well, you think he didn't?
Well, it's hard for me to believe that old-time professionals like yourself, and pardon me, Mr. Hayden, Harry Pierpont, Russell Clark, Harry Makeley, and John Hamilton would just sit back and let a newcomer like Dillinger make all the details of the robberies by himself?
Well, he did.
Homer.
But I ain't talking about none of them. Especially about how he lined up the jobs.
You mean this was while he was still in prison?
Yeah, what I ain't talking about happened in the pen long before we got out. That's right.
And what you're not going to tell us is that Dillinger was planning, inaugurated a series of bank robberies the minute he got out of prison.
That's exactly what I'm not telling you. These birds are trying to get me to spill the beans,
Yeah,
Johnny.
well,
How do you
Homer,
like that?
you gotta keep
I
it
bet
down.
John had a dozen capers all lined up before we got out. But I ain't telling you about none of them. Not a single one.
Homer, shut up, will
I
you?
ain't telling them nothing, Johnny. They couldn't drag anything out of me about the Greencastle caper.
Homer,
or
for
the
Pete's
Montpelier job, or the Newcastle
You
job.
stupid idiot.
Oh, wouldn't they like to know how we knocked off the Faro Bank?
Homer, will you shut up?
It's okay, John. I ain't told them nothing. I'm the original clam what's lost its voice.
Mr. Milan, more questions?
No, I have no further questions for this voiceless clam.
Mr. Hayden, you have anything? Mr. Smithers? Very well, you may cross-examine Mr. Dillinger.
Yeah.
Told him nothing pretty good, huh, John? Anybody say something funny?
Do you have any questions, Mr. Dillinger?
Yeah, Homer, I'd like to ask you one question. How is it you're so good at being dumb?
I don't know, Johnny. It's a mystery to me. Sometimes I don't even have to try.
All right, Mr. Van Meter, thank you very much for what you didn't tell us. You may step down now.
Well, so long, Johnny. I'll be seeing you. Well, now, that's a stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Dillinger, it would seem that you were planning your future criminal career while you were in prison. Now, do you want to go back to that story about the banks failing and the mortgage due to be foreclosed? All of this causing a sudden decision in you to wreak your private vengeance on the banks of this country?
Okay. Maybe it didn't happen just that way.
Just how did it happen, Mr. Dillinger?
Well, when the good citizens of Indiana decided to teach me my lesson, I decided to learn my lesson good. I was 20 years old when they threw me in a can for that 5 and dime stick-up. What do you think a grown boy's going to learn in a boarding school like that? Well, he learns to hate. Learns to hate more and more every day, everything and everybody. He's sitting out his youth. And he decides he's going to pay back. All right, from 20 to 29, I was studying hard, and I had some of the best teachers in the country around me. I had murderers, heisters, little crooks, big crooks, all the cream of the crop.
Yes, sir. Now, you're saying that you served 9 years of a 10-year sentence, and then you were paroled.
That's right. And then they revoked the parole and tried to get me back, but I wouldn't be got back.
And Homer Van Meter was paroled at the same time.
That's right.
And that left your friends Makeley, Hamilton, Pierpont, and Clark in prison. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that was purely a temporary state of affairs. I saw to that.
Oh, you admit helping these men escape from prison?
Why not? It's true, I admit it. Look, with all the unfinished business I got with Johnny Law, you think one more entry is going to make any difference? I know the score. Everybody knows the score. If they can hold me long enough to soak me with a rap, the next one's going to be the fat one, murder in the first. But the joker there is they got to hold me, and that's been tried.
Yes. Now, tell us how you engineered the escape of your 4 friends from Michigan City Penitentiary, Mr. Dillinger.
I did it. How I did it, that's my business.
Guns were smuggled into that prison. And on September 26, 1933, 10 convicts, including your 4 friends, overpowered the guards in that prison and escaped, didn't they?
That's about the way it happened, yeah.
You admit complicity in this prison break?
I just said yes to that once before.
But you weren't in Michigan City when the prison break occurred.
Yeah, that's right. I missed all the fun.
Where were you on September 26, 1933?
Now, you know where I was. I was in the Pokey in Lima, Ohio.
You had been picked up by the police in Dayton, charged with bank robbery, and then placed in the custody of a sheriff in Lima, Ohio.
Oh, my, you've done all your homework, haven't you?
Yes, sir, that I have. But what I'm really getting at, Mr. Dillinger, is a previous statement of yours. That in the good old American tradition of outlawry, you planned your criminal exploits so carefully that nobody ever got hurt, except their pocketbooks, of course.
Now, look, I was in jail when that one happened.
When what happened?
Oh, stop playing games. I know what you're getting at.
Well, I'm sure you do, sir.
Yeah, but you can't finger me for that killing.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Mr. Dillinger. Your 4 convict buddies broke out of the Michigan City Penitentiary on September 26, 1933, with guns that you supplied. 16 days later, October 12, 1933, they walked into Lima Jail where you were being held prisoner. Tell us what happened then.
Well, I don't have to tell you what happened. You read the newspapers.
They walked in on Sheriff Jesse Sauber. They claimed to be deputies from Michigan City, and they asked the sheriff to release you and their custody. Isn't that right?
What they said to the sheriff or what the sheriff said to them, I wouldn't know. I was asleep in my cell.
And when the sheriff questioned them, he asked to see their credentials. Your buddy Harry Pierpont emptied his gun into the sheriff's body and killed him in cold blood. And then Pierpont and your 3 buddies released you.
Yeah, that they did. But the killing, you can't hang that one on me.
Tell us, where did Pierpont get the gun that killed the sheriff?
Well, how do I know?
You just admitted you smuggled the gun into him when he was in prison.
There could have been a different gun. How do I know?
You see no responsibility on your part for the sheriff's death?
No, none.
Pierpont was a member of your gang, working under your orders.
I never ordered him to kill anybody.
You wash your hands of all responsibility, and yet you walked out of that cell over that sheriff's dead body.
Now, what was I supposed to do? Stop and give him first aid? Look, this Pierpont was a wild man with a gun, a crazy killer.
You set him free. You put a gun in that wild man's
I
hand.
did not
a gun
kill
in that
the
crazy
sheriff.
killer's hand. Mr. Chairman. Because you didn't pull the trigger.
That's right.
Just a minute. Sorry, Mr. Hayden. Will you go back to your seat, please?
I'm sorry, sir, but I must be heard.
We are in the midst of taking testimony.
That's exactly why I want to be heard.
Will you identify yourself?
I'll identify him. His name is Leach. He's a fink and a rat. All he came here to do was unload a pack of lies.
Yes, I see. Well, now, Mr. Leach, we do not permit interruption of testimony for any reason.
Mr.
However,
McGrath.
you will be called in good time.
Mr. McGrath, I'm executive officer of the Indiana State Police, and I'd like to spread a little truth on the record. I've heard about enough from this dirty hoodlum.
He can't call me that.
I'll call you what you are, a yellow-livered punk.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I got a right to be protected against that
Just
kind
a
of
moment.
stuff.
Hold everything, Mr. Dillinger. Mr. Leach, do I understand you to state that you have testimony to offer relevant to the matter now under consideration by this committee?
Nobody knows Dillinger like I do. I've made him my life work.
I see. Well, gentlemen, in that case, unless you have an objection, I will invoke my privilege and call Mr. Leach to the stand now.
Well, I have no objection.
Yeah, well, I got an objection. Privilege? What is this privilege? Privilege to do what? To listen to the one guy in the world who's made a living out of lying about Dillinger?
Now, Mr. Dillinger.
Well, I'm not going to stand for it. I've had this party.
Wait a minute. Guards, bring him back in.
John Dillinger, furious at the calling of Matthew Leach to the stand, has attempted to leave the hearing room. He suddenly grabbed a spectator from the audience, using her as a shield to aid in his escape. However, he has been forcibly subdued by the guards. The hearing room is in an uproar. Chairman McGrath has signaled for a recess. We'll return in a very few moments, but now back to our studios.
What kind of head scratcher are you? Wary? Eager? Thoughtful? Scratching won't solve your dandruff problem, but Endon will. Helene Curtis Endon Dandruff Treatment Shampoo. Endon really works. It's medically proved 99% effective. Used regularly, Endon is guaranteed to end your dandruff problems and prevent their return. While you shampoo, Endon's medications penetrate and remove dandruff. Leave invisible protection that lasts from shampoo to shampoo. Endon leaves your hair radiantly clean, soft, shiny, easy to manage.
I use Endon regularly as my only shampoo, and so does my whole family.
Helene Curtis Endon Dandruff Treatment Shampoo. Clear golden liquid, cream, or lotion. And for people with dry hair, new Special Endon, specially formulated for dry hair.
Back in the hearing room, the uproar sparked by John Dillinger's violent reaction to the calling of Executive Officer Matthew Leach of the Indiana State Police has not yet subsided. We are still in recess, and it appears it'll be a few moments before the session reconvenes. So briefly, we'll return you to our studios.
This portion of the witness was brought to you by Camel, the real cigarette. The best tobacco makes the best smoke. Speaking for Camel was James Daly.
Back in the hearing room, Chairman McGrath has just reconvened the probe of John Dillinger. We go to the floor and Mr. McGrath.
Mr. Dillinger, this committee has never yet taken testimony from a witness forcibly restrained. It would be most unfortunate if we had to break that precedent. However, I want to warn you, if you make one further move to leave this chamber, I will instruct the guards to handcuff you to your chair, and you will remain handcuffed until we've finished with you. Now, is that clear?
Yeah, that's clear.
Very well. Sit down, officer. Thank you.
Yeah, but you better get something else clear, too. Whatever Leach here says is a lie. I stood this guy on his ear a dozen times. I made him the laughing boy of every cop and newspaper in the country. It's no wonder he's got a burn on against me.
This committee is quite capable of judging the merits of his testimony without any help from you. Now, Mr. Leach, sir, would you state for the record again your name and occupation?
My name is Matthew Leach. I'm executive officer of the Indiana State Police.
Mr. Leach, how long ago did your office first take note of John Dillinger?
1924. In 1924, Dillinger and a Confederate robbed a grocery store in Mooresville and first came to the attention of the police.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Dillinger has told us here that as a result of participating merely as a lookout in this robbery, he received a sentence of 10 years in prison, whereas the man, according to him, who actually performed the robbery and who turned state's evidence, received a sentence of only 3 years.
That's not true. Dillinger hit the grocer over the head with a piece of lead pipe.
Oh, come on with that stuff.
He never served 10 years. He was given a 6 to 10 year sentence. And he was paroled in 1930 after serving the minimum 6 years. This story of the poor young boy who serves 10 years for acting only as a lookout has been repeated and repeated in the papers. It's become part of the Dillinger legend, but it's a lie.
You see what I told you?
Thank
He's
you
the one
very
that's
much,
lying.
sir. Thank you. Now, Mr. Leach, during Seymour Compton's testimony, we heard it stated here that Compton persecuted Dillinger, that Dillinger was hounded all through his prison term because he refused to play ball, I think the phrase was. Do you have any comment on that, sir?
I'm not going to put myself in the position of defending Compton. But for your information, Compton was fired from his job at the prison some time ago.
See?
I do know this to be a fact, that from the moment Dillinger walked into Michigan City Penitentiary, he proved himself to be incorrigible. He was not an innocent young boy corrupted by his surroundings. He was an absolute troublemaker.
What is this stuff?
Unwilling to accept any help or guidance.
Oh, that's a lot of bull.
I have here the prison psychiatrist's report. It states that his behavior was a classic pattern of the antisocial, pathological criminal.
Yeah, let me see that.
All right, Bailiff, would you take that to Mr. Dillinger, please? Go on, sir.
You can see there, he got into fights with the other inmates. He destroyed prison property. He made half a dozen attempts to escape.
He's just a bad boy.
This man should never have been paroled. And when the parole board released him from jurisdiction in May 1933, I went to the governor and pleaded with him not to leave this menace free of periodic supervision by the authorities. The governor did what I asked. He revoked the decision of the parole board. And when Dillinger failed to report, the governor declared him a delinquent parolee.
Now, Mr. Leach, if Dillinger was known to be such a dangerous criminal, why was he kept in the Lime, Ohio jail without adequate security? For instance, the record shows that the only one on duty that night was Sheriff Serva. He was alone when the 4 members of the Dillinger gang walked in and killed him.
Well, that's easily understood. At that time, the Ohio authorities didn't know that he was any different from any other hood. It wasn't until after the Lima escape that he got a reputation.
You mean a reputation as a public enemy?
Public enemy. Look, I don't understand what this sickness is with the American public that makes them fall in love with the likes of a Dillinger. They drool over his so-called exploits. They raise him up as some kind of a glamour boy. They lap up every word written about him. Listen, I was here when this punk yelled out, "Who made Dillinger?" I'll tell you who made Dillinger. You. The great American public. You with your craving for sensation and scandal. That's what made Dillinger. Not the real Dillinger, but the Dillinger of the headlines, of the Robin Hood legend. A Dillinger that never existed.
Mr. Leach, are you saying that Dillinger did not lead his gang in an unprecedented wave of bank robberies throughout the Midwest?
Sure, he robbed banks, but he's no Robin Hood. He's a crook. He's as brave as the machine gun he carries. And without that gun, he's just another 2-bit hoodlum. 9 out of 10 of the stories that you read that make up the Dillinger legend never happened.
Well, I wonder if you're aware that you are making a rather serious charge there, Mr. Leach. You're saying that the newspapers are printing false accounts of Dillinger's exploits.
I am saying that some writers are giving the public what they want, even though it happens to be false.
Well, now, sir, can you prove that?
Yes, sir, I can. Now, here's an article that appeared in a magazine with nationwide circulation, purporting to be the true story of Dillinger. Now, if you'll find the page I've marked with black crayon there, sir, you'll find a detailed account of how Dillinger planned and executed the robbery of the National Savings and Trust Company in Greencastle, Indiana. Do you find it there?
Yes, I have it here, Mr. Leach. Thank you.
It's a great story. It shows how clever Dillinger was in planning his robberies. It goes on in great detail to tell how this master criminal pretended to be shooting a movie. He had his gang acting out parts. He was the director, wearing riding boots and holding a megaphone. Do you find that there?
Yes,
sir?
I have it, and I'd like to read the concluding sentence to the committee. It says, the whole town gathered to watch the movie being shot, so that when the Dillinger mob actually robbed the bank and escaped, nobody tried to stop them. They thought it was all part of the movie.
Pretty clever, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I'd say it was extremely clever.
Only one thing wrong with it.
What's that, sir?
It never happened. Every word of that is something dreamed up by somebody who wasn't there. You tell him, big shot. Did it ever happen?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that happened. $144,000 happened.
Sure, you robbed the bank. You went in there with your gang, you leveled machine guns at everybody in the place, and you ran out with the money. But you didn't play movie director.
So what's the difference?
Well, I'll tell you the difference. This kind of irresponsible reporting perpetuates the Dillinger legend. And what's worse, it egged you on. You read your own press notices, and the more you read them until you actually believed them, the more you read about how smart you were, how big you were, how clever you were, the more you were out to live up to your press notices. So more robberies followed. And more killings. 13 killings, to be exact. I know, because I'm the official scorekeeper. 13 killings. And there's at least one more killing to come.
Well, you got a crystal ball or something?
Yeah, a crystal ball. I see it all. A guy face down in a gutter, dead. And I know who it is. It's you, Dillinger. Not the legend, but the man.
Any further questions, gentlemen?
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Leach, sir.
Very well.
Do you have any figures to indicate the total amount of money taken in the various robberies charged to Dillinger and his gang?
In round figures, about $250,000.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, you may question the witness, Mr. Dillinger.
I don't know whether it pays to bother.
You going to cross-examine or not?
Yeah, all right.
Very well.
You say our take was $250,000, huh? That's not a bad haul for somebody who's not supposed to have any brains, who isn't clever, huh?
I didn't say you had no brains. You've got brains and you're clever. You've got the sly cunning of a jackal or a hyena.
Who are you calling a hyena?
You. I'm calling you a hyena. You're a depraved, immoral, uncivilized animal.
Listen, buddy boy, I got some advice for you. Watch yourself. I got some friends who ain't in jail.
I've got some advice from you. Don't you dare threaten this or any other witness in this room. All right, Mr. Leach. The committee is very appreciative of your coming up from Indianapolis to testify. You may step down, sir. You're excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Mr. Dillinger, let me pick up the chronology of your bank robbing from the time your buddies freed you from the Lima, Ohio prison.
It's your nickel, mister.
That was October 12, 1933.
That's right, Columbus Day. The banks were closed.
2 days later, you and your gang raided the police station at Auburn, Indiana.
Yeah, we borrowed some supplies.
You stole a whole arsenal of weapons, didn't you? Machine guns, pistols, ammunition, bulletproof vests.
Yeah, we hunted high and low for some tanks, too, but they were just fresh out.
You followed this up with another raid on a police station a week later at Greencastle, Indiana.
Well, we read about how mad the cops were about that Auburn caper, so we decided one good burn deserves another.
We don't see anything funny about this, Mr. Dillinger.
You know, neither did the cops.
But now you were really ready to start rolling. On October 26, you robbed the National Savings and Trust Company of Greencastle. $144,000.
Wages of sin.
1 month later, Racine, Wisconsin, $28,000. December 13th, now it's Chicago, $3,700.
Yeah, peanuts.
And that brings us to January 15, 1934, and East Chicago, Indiana. It also brings me to a statement you made a short while ago, that you always planned your operations so carefully, no one ever got hurt.
Well, there's bound to be a slip-up every now and then.
Tell us what slipped up on the East Chicago job.
Well, we were running that job just clean and sweet, see, no problems. Then all of a sudden, off the street in barges this bull-headed cop.
Are you talking about the late patrolman Patrick O'Malley?
That's the one. In he comes waving his .38. All of a sudden, before anybody knows what's happening, he's emptying his gun at me. Well, I had no choice. I let go with the chopper. Now, but Now, that was self-defense. He shot first. What was I going to do, stand
Come
there?
on, let's stop this self-defense nonsense. You were robbing a bank. You were carrying a .45 caliber submachine gun. What did you expect to use it for? You deliberately aimed your machine gun at a police officer trying to uphold the law, and you cut that man in half. What do you call that? It's murder pure and simple. That's what I call it.
I didn't ask a man to walk in the bank.
You shot that officer down in cold blood, and don't you try to deny that, did you?
I didn't.
And you were wearing a bulletproof vest.
So I was wearing a tin vest. What's that got to do with it?
They call that a yellow vest, don't they, Mr. Dillinger? You're not the big, brave, gallant desperado you pretend to be. Without a machine gun and a bulletproof vest, you are contemptible and yellow.
Yellow? You're calling me yellow?
Yes, I'm calling you yellow.
The guy that busted out of prison with nothing but a wooden gun? I wasn't wearing any tin vest that time. The guy who had the FBI running itself ragged all over the state of Wisconsin? The guy who was number one on their wanted list? Public enemy number one? You're calling me yellow? Let's put those things on the record. You want the facts? Let's talk about those things, huh?
All right, we'll get those things on the... Mr. McGrath, could we now call Miss Mildred Hall, please?
Yes.
Now, wait a minute. What do you want her for? I thought you wanted the facts. I'm the guy you want to get the facts from around here.
Sit down, Dillinger. Sit down. Mr. Clerk, will you call Mildred Hall? Now, this committee will secure its testimony as it desires and from whom it desires, without any help from you. Will you swear in the witness, please, Mr. Clerk?
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your full name.
Mildred Hall.
Be seated, please.
The committee, in a surprise move, has summoned Mildred Hall to the stand. Mildred Hall, known to have been John Dillinger's mistress, the woman who accompanied him on some of his wildest adventures. Mildred Hall, now serving a prison sentence for complicity in the Dillinger crimes. Certainly the one person in the world who can give us the intimate and personal details of public enemy number one, John Dillinger, is about to take the stand. We'll be getting to a testimony in a very few moments, but briefly, we return you to our studios.
When the sun shines on a newly cleaned window, look at how the streaks show up. What you need is Easy Off push-button window spray. Seeing is believing. Put your windows to the Easy Off sunshine test. See how easily Easy Off spreads? No dripping, no powdery leftover, and when the sun shines bright, there's not a streak or a smudge. Keep your windows sunshine bright with new Easy Off. Extra large size, only 49 cents. You save 10 cents.
Woolite and cold water. Woolite, the cold water washing discovery specially created for woolens. Woolite prevents shrinking or stretching. A spoonful in cold water, and in minutes, Woolite floats stirred out with super gentle thoroughness. No harmful squeezing and no tiresome blocking. Woolens hold their color and shape without shrinking. Even delicate synthetics wash beautifully, never stretch. If it's worth washing by hand, it's worth washing in Woolite. Woolite is right.
Down in the hearing room, Mildred Hall, girlfriend of John Dillinger, has been sworn in and is now being questioned by Chairman McGrath.
Well, I ask you this merely for the record. You are now serving a prison term, are you not, for having aided and abetted John Dillinger in his escape from the Crown Point jail?
That's me, a little girl holding the bag. When you needed me, I ran. Did everything you wanted. When I needed you...
Honey, I had problems of my own.
I bet.
Now, please, let's not have any of these side remarks. Miss Hall, will you kindly face the committee and try to confine your remarks to answers?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Now, how long have you known John Dillinger?
Maybe a year.
Where did you meet him?
I was doing a strip act in Chicago burlesque. Dillinger caught my act and he liked it.
And you went out with him?
Oh, come on. Why not? He seemed like a free spender, a good Joe. And I hated burlesque. Those grinds were getting me down.
Miss Hall, when did you realize what business he was in?
When I woke up one morning and found a machine gun under my pillow. I want to tell you, that's a weird experience.
I imagine it must be, ma'am. But after you found out that the man you'd taken up with was a hunted criminal, did you continue on with this relationship?
Well, look, everybody wanted Dillinger, and I had him. Well, that made me feel like a somebody. Instead of stripping away my life on a burlesque runway in front of a herd of bug-eyed baboons, I was somebody. I was Dillinger's mom.
And after Dillinger killed Patrolman O'Malley in the East Chicago holdup, he and his gang went into hiding. Is that right?
That's right.
Now, did you go with them?
No, I stayed in Chicago. Dillinger and the gang flew the coop to Tucson, Arizona. And that's when I first began to realize that this big, smart desperado was just one notch dumber than an ape.
Hey, Millie, what are you doing?
Now, Miss Hall, well, tell us what happened in Tucson.
Yeah, I'll tell you. You know, they ought to print that every Sunday in the funny papers. These shrewd and crafty outlaws. Well, they were in this hotel in Tucson with enough guns and ammunition to start a whole revolution. So what happens? Suddenly, there's a fire in the hotel. Well, they panic and they run like a bunch of scared rabbits. The firemen come in, they look around, machine guns, bullets, pistols. Right away, they yell for the cops. In the meantime, where's our hero? Is he putting as much distance as he can between himself and the hotel room? Oh, not on your life. He is standing outside on the sidewalk with the rest of his gang watching those firemen climb the ladders. So he gets picked up, and the others too. The great Dillinger, collared by a Hicktown sheriff.
And as a result of this arrest, Dillinger was taken to Crown Point, Indiana to stand trial for the murder of Patrolman O'Malley, right?
That's right.
Yes, and this brings us to what is regarded as one of the most sensational moments in Mr. Dillinger's career, his escape from Crown Point. I'd like to ask you a few questions about that, Miss Hall.
Couldn't ask anybody better.
You visited him at the Crown Point jail, didn't you?
Half a dozen times.
And you spoke with him there?
He told me what to do, and I did it.
Yes. What did he tell you to do?
Smuggle him a gun.
And did you?
I did.
Oh, come on now, Millie. She didn't give me any gun.
I didn't. Are you trying to tell me I didn't get a gun from Homer Van Meter and slip it to you while that guard had his nose in a racing form?
Honey, listen, you know you didn't bring me a gun, not a real one. You know that.
Are you going to stick with that wooden gun, Jazz, that phony story?
May we have order, please?
Miss Hall?
No, come on.
Miss Hall, this story about John Dillinger's escaping from prison armed only with a wooden gun has been printed in nearly every newspaper in this country. It's regarded as an absolute fact.
And I tell you, it's as phony as a $3 bill. Look, you want to know what happened? What really happened?
We'd be very interested to know.
Oh, sure, he made it look good. He was always thinking of the headlines. He spent a lot of time whittling away at a piece of washboard. Oh, that was for window dressing. The truth of the matter is he wouldn't have dared to make that break if he didn't have a gun, a real gun. And he had one because I brought it to him.
Oh, that's a lot of garbage. Don't
Garbage, huh? He pulled the real gun on the warden. Then he got a hold of 2 machine guns from the warden's office. And he took off with one of those guards as a hostage. But not before he'd left that phony wooden gun that he'd been whittling on where the cops would find it. And that's how malarkey is born.
Thank you, Miss Hall. I have no further questions.
I have no questions. Gentlemen, do you have anything else?
No, I have no.
Very well, Mr. Dillinger, you may question the witness if you wish.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Ah, Millie. You're looking great. No kidding, it's really good to see you, honey.
All right, now, up, sir.
Knock it off.
It's been a long time since I seen her, that's all. Ah, Millie, come on now. What's the beef? What do you got against me? Didn't I always treat you fine like a lady?
Oh, sure, you were great. You loaded me down with promises. You decked me out with all kinds of dreams. Oh, I was just dripping with furs and jewels that were always going to come, but they never did.
Well, honey, you got to admit I didn't have much time for shopping.
You bet you didn't. You only had time for nothing but saving your own neck.
Yeah, but I always saw to it that you were put up nice, didn't I?
Oh, sure, real nice. Let's tell 'em how nice the gun moll of a mobster lives. Let's paint the whole glamorous picture.
It was better than you ever had it before.
Was it?
Yeah.
Living in one flea bag hotel after another. Eating out of cans because we didn't dare go out in public, not even to a decent restaurant.
Cut it out, will you? I took you to Florida, didn't I?
Oh, yeah, to a big resort. The plumbing was outside. I had to share it with a 10-foot crocodile.
Yeah, I took you also up to Wisconsin on a vacation, too, didn't I?
Oh, that was nice and restful. The only fly in the ointment was that machine gun raid by the G-men. We finally managed to get out of that trap. Oh, that was the best part. Remember? Playing hide-and-go-seek in the swamps, and me up to my knees in freezing water, and me without galoshes. Oh, that was great. Oh, we ought to do it all over again.
Look, I treated you as good as I was able. You know that.
That's what I've been saying. You weren't able. You were always running. You were always out of breath. And you know what? You were always scared. Here. Let's get that down on the record because that's important. Dillinger, the big, bad man, he was always scared.
I don't want to talk to this one anymore. Get rid of her. Somebody paid her off to come up here and lie.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we ought to let that remark go unchallenged. May I put a few more questions to Miss Hall?
Certainly, Mr. Hayden, proceed.
Oh, wait a minute. You said I could cross-examine her. I'm finished. That means she's finished, too. Isn't that right?
No. Mr. Hayden has a perfect right to re-examine the witness. Go ahead, sir.
Miss Hall, did anyone pay you to come here and testify?
No.
Were you promised any special consideration by the Indiana authorities for your testimony?
No.
And what you've told this committee is the truth as you recall it?
Every word.
And your testimony has not been deliberately changed because of personal motives?
What personal motives?
Well, it seems fairly obvious to me anyway that your affection for Mr. Dillinger has been slightly dimmed.
I hate his guts.
But as we understand it, Miss Hall, it wasn't too long ago that you saved his life.
You mean when those phony doctors were giving him a nose job?
Yes, we'd like to hear about that.
Well, he thought it'd be a good idea that he'd have his face changed so he wouldn't be recognized. He asked me to go with him, so I went. When it came time for them to put him under ether, he was so scared his eyes were popping out. They had to sit on him to put him under. Well, finally, he was under, and these sawbones begin working on him. Suddenly, they stopped. I take a look at him. He's turning blue. Now, this joker that's been cutting him up looks at me and says he's dead. He swallowed his tongue. He strangled himself to death. Now, listen to this. These sawbones start to talk about calling for the cops. They want to collect the reward. So I grabbed a gun and I held it on him. I held it until they gave him respiration, until he started to breathe again. I'm the one that saved his life.
Miss Hall, have you ever regretted that action?
Oh, 1,000 times, mister. But I loved him then.
What has since turned you against him?
Well, when I was pinched, he was off somewhere. Did he try to help me? Did he do anything to help me? Not on your life. I didn't have a cent. Did he send me a lawyer? He didn't give a tinker's damn about me. So I got wise. I knew that Dillinger was for Dillinger and nobody else. All he cared about was his story. He always thinks he's like those gangsters in the movies. You know, big and brave and smart and dangerous. Well, he's not. He's just a common variety of scared rat.
Get her out of here. I'm sick of looking at her.
Remember, Johnny, those gangsters always wind up dead in the last reel.
I remember, Millie. I'll be looking for you.
Is that another threat, Mr. Dillinger?
That's whatever you want to call it. Look, I don't want any more of this. I'm right up to here with it. You guys think you're going to cut me up like I was some tin-horn punk? You think you're going to get anybody to believe what that tramp told you? Nobody's going to believe it. Everybody knows about Dillinger. I've been headlines in every newspaper. They're even putting me in the history books right now. And when you guys are dead and buried, they'll still be reading about Dillinger. They're going to write books about me. They're going to make movies about me. And it's not finished yet either. I haven't given the finish the story yet. Now you can put this in your stupid record. There ain't a jail big enough or strong enough to hold John Dillinger.
I'm Rod Serling, your guide to the land of the different, the bizarre, the unexplainable. That shadowy tip of reality. You reach it through any road you like. The only limits are those of the mind itself. When you enter the wondrous world of imagination. Next stop?
Where am I? How did I get here? What is this place?
Each of us has a counterpart in this world. And sometimes through something unexplainable.
Next stop, the Twilight Zone. The first and last stop on your journey into the imagination. Friday nights on most of these stations.
May we have order, please? John Dillinger in the
Space of little more than 16 months, you and your henchmen rode riot through the Midwest, robbing, pillaging, committing cruel and wanton murder. Now, these facts are incontrovertible, and the law will deal with you accordingly. Of this you can be very sure. But what concerns this committee is the creation and spreading of the Dillinger legend. A legend compounded, as we have seen, of a mixture of imagination, exaggeration, and outright lies. Now, the responsibility for this false image lies with many people. But in the last analysis, it is you, the American public, who must shoulder most of the blame. And it is you who will pay for it, particularly through your children. Think for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, of the pictures you have seen of the bullet-ridden victims of this and other hoodlums. And ask yourself, is there anything glamorous? Is there anything attractive about him or his kind? Mr. Dillinger, you boast that after we are dead and gone, your exploits will be read about and there will be movies shown about you. Perhaps you are right. But we who now know you have only contempt for you. This hearing is adjourned.
On July 22nd, 1934, John Dillinger attended his last gangster movie. Tipped off by the famous Lady in Red, federal agents surrounded the Biograph Theater in Chicago. When Dillinger emerged, the agents closed in. Dillinger dashed for a side alley in a futile attempt to escape. Machine guns blazed away. Dillinger was dead before he hit the ground. Tonight's witness was John Dillinger. Next week, the witness will be Shoeless Joe Jackson, the brilliant outfielder, who stands accused by many as the player who plotted with gamblers to throw the 1919 World Series, resulting in a shocking Black Sox scandal.
I'm George Maharis. With Martin Milner, I travel Route 66 in tomorrow's action story on most of these stations. Check it. Tune it in.
This portion of the witness was brought to you by the makers of Easy Off, the new push-button window spray that floats away dirt and keeps windows sunshine clear.
The preceding program was pre-recorded. United States savings bonds are just about the biggest bargain there is. For one thing, you know your investment is guaranteed safe because our whole country is standing behind it. For another thing, savings bonds grow so fast, especially when you buy them through the payroll savings plan. Simply decide how much you want to save each week, ask your employer to set aside that amount and invest it for you in United States savings bonds. Or visit your bank and make arrangements to purchase U.S. savings bonds on a regular basis.